Thank you for joining us with Living the Faith. I got Josiah on my left, Hardy on my right, and today we're going to learn about Israel's first ICE agent, David. All right, let's kick us starting.
Under my protest. Okay, well, we just exited out of 1 Samuel chapter 22, and you might recall that David received the news that Doeg the Edomite basically snitched on him, that he went in and talked to the priests and ended up getting all the priests killed by Saul's orders, that he slaughtered all the priests. So that was all Doeg's fault.
Yep.
Anyway, he's a jerk.
All right, and now we're going to see how David becomes the first ICE agent of Israel, the original. Let's go, Hardy. Let's jump into
We'll get into that in a minute. Why that's the title. Anyway, so 1 Samuel 23, verse 1. Then they told David, saying, "Behold, the Philistines are attacking Keilah and are pillaging in the threshing floors." So David asked of Yahweh, saying, "Shall I go and strike these Philistines?" And Yahweh said to David, "Go and strike the Philistines and save Keilah." Oh, yeah. One note, I am reading out of the LSB.
Oh, thanks, Hardy. Now
And so that's why it says Yahweh instead of the Lord. Anyway,
the LSB.
okay, back to it.
Off
Verse
now.
3.
You could read from the screen, you know.
But David.
It's right here. You could just.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
But David's men said to him, "Look, we are afraid here in Judah. How much more than if we go to Keilah against the armies of the Philistines?" Then David inquired of the Lord once again. And the Lord answered him and said, "Arise, go down to Keilah, for I will deliver the Philistines into your hand." And David and his men went to Keilah and fought with the Philistines, struck them with a mighty blow, and took away their livestock. So David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. Now it happened after Abiathar, the son of Abimelech, fled to David at Keilah, that he went down with an ephod in his hand. And Saul was told that David had gone to Keilah. So Saul said, "God has delivered him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars." So Saul called all the people together for war, to go down to Keilah and besiege David and his men. When David knew that Saul plotted evil against him, he said to Abiathar the priest, "Bring the ephod here." And David said, "O Lord God of Israel, your servant has certainly heard that Saul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Will the men of Keilah deliver me into his hand? Will Saul come down as your servant has heard? O Lord God of Israel, I pray, tell your servant." And the Lord said, "He will come down." Then David said, "Will the men of Keilah deliver me and my men into the hands of Saul?" And the Lord said, "They will deliver you." So David and his men, about 600, arose and departed from Keilah and went wherever they could go. Then it was told Saul that David had escaped from Keilah, so he halted the expedition.
Yeah, we'll stop there. All right. So we see here that David gets his first ICE raid given to him by his commanding officer, the King of Kings. We talked about that off scene. It was Hard's idea. Brilliant.
And in true fashion, the the woke inhabitants
Oh my gosh.
they want him to leave.
Yep. Not only that, they were going to betray him. They were like, "We appreciate your help,
Oh my gosh.
but we're going to rat on you."
I could imagine the people in Keilah, after being, abused and whatnot by the Philistines, being like, "Oh, David's mean."
So here's the funny thing, okay? The Philistines do not like Israel.
No.
They come in and they try to take advantage of Israelites. And then so David goes in and saves them, drives the Philistines from them, or kills them. I don't remember. I don't even know if it says it. At least at a minimum, drives them out or kills them. Anyway, and then what happens? He finds out that Saul is coming for him. And so he asks God, is the city going to rat me out to them?
Mm-hmm.
And God's like, yes, they are.
Yep.
And so he just got done saving them. And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, we want you gone. So Saul, come here. He's here. David's in the town. Come get him. Sounds very similar to the mindset of our culture. To some people in our culture.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's not the whole point, because there's more to the story. Josiah, what is going on in this section of the chapter?
Yeah. So Philistines have entered the land unlawfully, and David's there to oust them. Yeah, enforcing the law.
Yep.
No invaders.
Yep.
But anyway, beyond that, I was just kind of considering the attitude of the inhabitants of Keilah, and it says here in verse 2 that it says, "And the Lord said to David, 'Go and attack the Philistines.'" Actually, sorry, no, the reason I highlighted this one was not the inhabitants of Keilah, actually David's men. So it says, "Go and attack the Philistines and save Keilah." But David's men said to him, "Look, we are afraid to be here in Judah." Remember that these people, David's men, they were all the outcasts and the kind of the misfits of society, people who owed debts or, whatever, were escaping, society for one reason or another. And so they're already uncomfortable being back in more populated areas. They're like, hey, we don't even want to be here. We were out in the desert and we were happy out there, kind of thing. And so David dragged them over here, and they're like, hey, we're afraid to be in Judah. How much more if we go to Keilah and against the armies of the Philistines? So I don't think they're looking to pick a fight, David's men. But after asking and inquiring of God once, after that response, David goes and inquires once again, and the Lord answers and says, it's kind of like, is he expecting God to change his mind? He's just like, oh, you guys don't want to fight. Well, don't worry about it. Just go hide in the woods. But no, he asked God, and then God says, arise, go down to Keilah, for I would deliver the Philistines into your hand. And so just thinking on that, before I throw too many stones at them, I think we're the exact same way with God's will in our own life. Is we figure, we're like, you know what, I feel like God's telling me to do this, and then we meet a little bit of resistance, and we're like, well, this couldn't be God's will, and so we ask again, kind of thing. And there's a reluctance when we attempt to follow God's will, and when we meet resistance, we're thinking almost like we're divining God's will. Well, this can't be God's will, because if this was, then I wouldn't be meeting resistance, but then you go back and ask God again, and he's just like, no, just get on and do it, So I thought that was interesting. I think it's a good insight into human nature as a whole.
One other thing of note about Philistines is that the word Philistine could either mean immigrant or foreigner, and they were an inhabitant of Philistia, descendants of Mitzrayim, who immigrated from Captor, which could possibly be Crete, to the western seacoast of Canaan. So they were never original, and had no claim to the land per se. And also another interesting about the word Philistine and Philistia is that the Romanized version of Philistine or Philistia is Palestine. And so even the people who the name was actually derived from never had a right to be there in the first place. And were always a thorn in the side of Israel.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Everybody's an immigrant from somewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
True.
That
Yeah.
is
It's
true.
like this is all God's world. I mean, we're just kind of tenants.
But I think it's worth. I think it's worth mentioning
Yeah.
that, in fact, the word Philistine means immigrant or foreigner.
Yeah.
So
I just kind of think it's funny because like everybody like who complains very loudly about like, well, this is my land, I'm a native here or whatever. It's just like, well, you did come from somewhere. And it's a little bit like squatters' rights, They're like, this is my place, get out of here. I'm here first. It's just like you're squatting.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I just think it's funny. Nobody truly, you don't own
Yeah.
anything. Whether you own a house, you may own property, but it's not yours.
Yeah.
It's not even the government's. It's God's land. And he gets to boot out and install whoever he wills.
Yep.
So, I
Yeah.
don't know.
We always put like this emphasis on like the government will save us. The government knows what's best or yada yada. Then they turn around and say, "Oh, we can't trust the government."
Yeah.
But they want to.
in this case, the established government is Saul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely can't trust him.
He's the one in control of the establishment. Oh, but you could argue that he is not the established king any longer, but he still controls the government
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah, so I kind of want to look at some things here. Is there's like a contrast that we see, and you see this. You'll see this mentioned multiple times. Is David inquired of the Lord, and Saul assumed of the Lord. You know, and so, David's like, what am I gonna do? What should I do? Right? He's getting his direction. He's getting his guidance from God.
Yep.
And Saul's over there like, hey, God has delivered him into my hand. And so he's like assuming that he has favor with God, even though he's been told multiple times, God is not with you. And he's like, dude, God delivered David in my hands. Let's go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because David is divining the will of God by the prescriptive means, which he has the priest there, Abiathar, right? That's his name. And he brought with him when he fled from Saul the ephod, which was basically a part of the priestly garment, and I believe with the Urim and Thummim on that ephod. And so he was going to inquire of God. If you want to read the Urim and Thummim, it's in Leviticus, I believe, and Deuteronomy probably. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's in a couple spots in the Old Testament. And that was God's prescriptive means of, hey, if you have a question and the priest comes before me with the Urim and Thummim, he'll ask of me, and then and nobody knows what they are. It's translated like lights and perfections or something like that. I don't know. It's kind of confusing. Anyway, it's surmised that might be like certain gemstones that would like light up if this one would light up if that was God's, if it was a no, and this one would light up if it was a yes, kind of thing. Anyway, so David is approaching God and asking and inquiring by his prescriptive means. Saul is exercising basically like circumstantial divination. He's just like, oh, this circumstance fell into place. This must be God's will. And that's how a lot thing divine God's will.
Another
Like,
thing
hey,
that-
this person I really like.
Yeah.
Happen to see him at the store. Maybe it's God's will. We're going to get together.
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
I think the other thing to note too is that back then it was the prescribed method wasn't just through. It wasn't like anybody could just go grab one of these.
No,
and
it was
Urim
a-
and
it was
Thummim.
a priest only.
It was a
Yeah.
priest. You
Yeah.
had to go to a priest, a Levite priest, and inquire of God. That was the way through. And it's interesting to note that this whole system is a sacrificial system too. Now it doesn't say. Was there a sacrifice here?
It's not recorded here. You'd have to check in
Yeah.
in Leviticus to see if there was a sacrifice that went along with the question.
But the whole idea too about coming before God through a priest with a sacrifice is carried on into is actually carried on into the New Testament. But we have one sacrifice, that's Jesus, and we're able to. But the attitude of the heart is to be the same. You're not coming through any power of your own, but we're told to come humbly and boldly before the throne, because through the blood of Christ, because of the blood of Christ. That's our that's our not just a covering as it was back then, but his blood has cleansed us from our sins. And so I think it's good to note that we actually have the same system, but it's a completed system. It's a finished system. Whereas back then it was an unfinished forth telling of the completion. So,
well, yeah, and talking about like what Christ did for us, right? Tearing the veil, allowing us to be able to go into his presence. We don't need that priest anymore. We don't need that ephod to communicate with God, because we can through Christ. He is our mediator, our priest. Yep. He's the one that intercedes for us, right? And so, like, David here is doing what every Christian has the ability to do now at any time.
Anytime, yeah.
But what seems to be the case is, and I know from personal experience too, is that it seems like we lean more toward how Saul does things. Oh, I feel like God is giving,
I feel like God's doing a thing.
Yeah.
I feel.
And so it's like they do react and go based on their feelings, assuming what God is wanting them is that because of the circumstances, like, oh, God is giving me favor in this, right? Yeah. But they're not actually ever, and you don't see Saul ever actually reaching out to God in this passage, at least. He has in other times, and God was silent, which should tell you something. But yeah, no, so he just now assumes. And I think a lot of Christians are doing that now. And I mean, personally, we need to have this shift where, like, in James, and I forgot what chapter it was. I think it was chapter 4. It says that don't go and say, tomorrow I'm going to do this and that and the other, because you don't know what tomorrow holds. But you should say, if the Lord wills, I'll do this, this, and this, because we aren't guaranteed tomorrow. We don't know what tomorrow holds. And everything is today, right? So we can only know, like, we don't know what's going to happen in 5 hours from now, right? So if the Lord wills, this is what my plan is. And there's a passage in Proverbs says, man plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps, right? I've heard this from Living Waters once. They said, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans for the day. And it's true, because, like, I'm sure this particular time, David was like, he didn't want to go to Keilah, right? But he inquired of God, and God said go, and he's like, are you sure? Like, can we not go? But we see the deliverance there. We see the victory, right? And then, obviously, David following after God's heart. He's inquiring of the Lord and is truly obedient to when God says to do something, unlike Saul. And so he actually hears from God. So there's a willingness to be obedient despite the fear. And they had the fear. And what is courage? It's facing fear, defacing. What is it? It's like a saying. Courage is facing the fear, bro.
I don't know.
It's a pithy saying. I don't know. It's like courage is
continuing in the circumstance despite your fear.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Pretty close.
It's doing something in spite of the fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the absence of fear. It's doing something in spite of the fear.
That's it. That's what it was. Thank you. Yeah.
I didn't know where you're going. I was trying to finish your sentence, and so I was like, I don't know if I've ever heard that one. But
no, yeah, you guys have heard it. I just couldn't re-say it. But anyway, that's some of the character that we see in David. Yeah.
Well, why don't we continue? All right,
let's continue.
Verse 15.
14.
14?
Right there.
Oh, interesting.
Good.
Yeah. So, and David stayed in the strongholds in the wilderness and remained in the mountains of the wilderness of Ziph. Saul sought him every day, but God did not deliver him into his hand. So David saw that Saul had come out to seek his life, and David was in the wilderness of Ziph in the forest. Then Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the woods and strengthened his hand in God. And he said to him, "Do not fear, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. You shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Even my father Saul knows that." So the two of them made a covenant before the Lord, and David stayed in the woods, and Jonathan went to his own house. Then the Ziphites came up to Saul in Gibeah, saying, "Is David not hiding with us in the strongholds in the woods, in the hill of Keilah, which is in the south of Jeshimon?" Yeah, David just can't catch a break with these people, man. Now, therefore, O king, come down according to all your desire in your soul to come down. And our part shall be to deliver him into the king's hand. And Saul said, "Blessed are you of the Lord, for you have compassion on me. Please go and find out for sure, and see the place where his hideout is. And he who has seen him, and who has seen him there. For I am told he is very crafty. See therefore, and take knowledge of all the lurking places where he hides, and come back with me with certainty, and I will go with you. And it shall be, if he is in the land, that I will search for him throughout the clans of Judah." So they arose and went to Ziph before Saul. But David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the plain of the south of Jeshimon. When Saul and his men went to seek him, they told David. Therefore he went down to the rock and stayed in the wilderness of Maon. And when Saul heard that, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. And Saul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his other men on the other side of the mountain. So David made haste to get away from Saul, for Saul and his men were encircling David and his men to take them. But a messenger came to Saul, saying, "Hurry and come down, for the Philistines have invaded the land." Therefore Saul returned from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. So they called that place the Rock of Escape. Then David went up from there and dwelt in the strongholds at En-gedi.
You know, it's kind of interesting. God doesn't really save David early. God saves David right when Saul thinks he's winning. You know?
Yeah.
And he does that because God respects dramatic timing.
He does.
Oh, yeah. And it's also like he knows what it's going to take for proud people to be, broken too. And, he'll take them right up to that point and then just be like, nope. Mm-hmm. and that's the thing. It's like, here Saul's coming along. He's about to get David, and then, nope, you don't get him. Mm-hmm. Nope, you don't get him. And it's like, and it's probably at this point, Saul he's already nuts. And so it's just like a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And he's,
I love the comments that Saul always makes. It's like, "Oh, you are
oh yeah, woe is me.
Woe is me," but it was the what he
you
says.
Have compassion on me.
Yes, you have. "Blessed are you of the Lord, for you have compassion on me. The Lord has delivered him into my hands," and like constantly, always like the Lord has given me a favor, and it's like Saul's wrong, and then he's wrong with confidence, which is funny because then it makes him even more wrong.
Mm-hmm. And it is interesting to note that language. How he's saying, "Oh, the Lord, blessed are you of the Lord. Oh, you have compassion on me," and that's very nice speech, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's good to note too that right now he's under the influence of an evil spirit.
Yeah.
And so here he's got the language. We know Saul's in the wrong because we have the bird's eye view. We have that. We're looking at the story in its entirety, but So we know Saul's the bad guy, so to speak, in this case, and yet he sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking on that, that's a really good thought. Like, he basically has an evil spirit, and evil spirits can use godly language too. Just
Mhm.
like, oh,
Mhm.
blessed are you of the Lord God. Thank you so much for telling me, you know.
Mhm.
But I think in the moment you have to actually be discerning. Is like, don't just take somebody's word for it. Like,
Mhm.
what are they trying to do, you know? And Saul was trying to kill David.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he'd laid down a pattern of erratic behavior, and you know, it's like the people who are his subjects, you know, they're supporting him, they're turning David in and
Mhm.
all this kind of stuff, and they might be thinking, well, he's the king, I gotta honor the king, but you know, it's like, what is he doing, and does that line up with God's will? You have to use discernment in the moment. And there's lots of people who use godly language, but their actions are evil, you know. And you just got to be like, you're not what you say you are, you know.
Or they're deceived by somebody who, like Saul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think,
Stalin called them useful idiots.
yeah.
We have other words for them in America.
I was just thinking of like the earlier passage. I was like, it didn't seem like David even wanted to go save Keilah.
No.
It's like, do I have to go?
Yeah.
Can we like not go?
Yeah. Travis, before we
Yes.
end, you ought to read a psalm.
I ought to read a psalm.
Yeah. Because David wrote a psalm about this current experience.
He did. Let
Yep.
me just get there.
And
As I try to
we have a
navigate this.
song. So we know that David is very musical, and he sang a lot of psalms. He had some instruments, all that kind of stuff. And so here's a rendition, kind of a more or less authentic. It's a Hebrew song. So as Travis is reading this, we're going to listen to a song like David might have played.
Oh, do I have to read it in the New King James?
I don't care. Sure. Yes, please. Yeah,
No,
I'll put it
everybody's
up for you
attention's
if
gonna
you
be
so
split.
desire.
Okay.
I'll
Go
have
ahead,
it
put
right
it up.
here.
I was going to read it in the NASB.
Well, I'm just gonna throw it up, and so check this out, friends. It's really nice. Kind of.
Where's the scripture?
It's coming. Hey, hold your horses. Bruh.
Save me, O God, by your name, and vindicate me by your strength. Hear my prayer, O God. Give ear to the words of my mouth. For the strangers have risen up against me, and oppressions have sought after my life. They have not set God before them. Selah. Behold, God is my helper. The Lord is with those who uphold my life. He will repay my enemies for their evil. Cut them off in your truth. I will freely sacrifice to you. I will praise your name, O Lord, for it is good. For he has delivered me out of all trouble, and my eye has seen its desire upon my enemies.
Nice. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's
I like
pretty good.
that.
Wish I knew exactly what they were saying in English.
Well, I thought about cutting off the word there, so you'd pause because he was about to say Selah, and that would have like got you back in there, right in time with him. But
That
don't worry
would have
about it.
helped.
Nah, that's fine.
Yeah, that was good. But anyway, yeah, so Psalm 54 was based on the Ziphites
Yeah.
betraying him. Being betrayed a second time.
Also, I think it rhymes a lot better in Hebrew. You know, it just sounds more melodious and nice.
It actually
Um,
it's
We
the
have an
interesting
English
thing
version,
about
but-
Hebrew music though is that even in the original language it never actually rhymed.
Yeah, but it sounds good.
It's not like
It's
our
not that
rhyming.
it's not our rhyming. Yeah, I get that. But
Yeah, they
it does
didn't-
at least sound nice.
So it's interesting. music in our world means rhyme and meter with a tune. And poetry means rhyme and meter That's what constitutes poetry. It's a consistent rhyme. It's a consistent rhythm. And but with Hebrew, it's a consistent thought. And so that's what
Comparing
constitutes
ideas.
Yeah, it's a consistent thing. Proverbs are contrasting thoughts.
Sometimes.
That's the idea.
Or they're
though,
parallel, though.
Yeah. When it comes to so there's wisdom, and then sometimes it crosses over, where it's a song and it's a proverb.
Yeah.
And so you have that, but yeah, in Hebrew, it's actually a reoccurring thought rather than a reoccurring rhythm.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's kind of funny because when we're rhyming, we're like, oh, this word sounds like that word. And it has no, not really much connection with the two. And then, but with them, they're like, the thoughts are parallel. So it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Blessed is the godly, and in him the Lord delights.
Yeah. Saying something, saying the same thing twice, but two different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Travis, what are we doing?
Well, I have something, but
Just a final thought.
Are we wrapping up?
Oh, well, I don't know. You said
Well, okay, no,
6:30.
hold on. I want to backtrack a little bit before I get to my final statement. I want to kind of comb through this whole chapter, right? So what we see is right in the beginning, David hears that Keilah is going to be attacked by the Philistines. So he inquires of the Lord, should we go and attack? And God says yes. But his men were afraid, so he asked again, and God said, yes, I will deliver them into your hands. So they go, they deliver him. And then what happens? Keilah betrays them and rats on them to Saul. Saul now comes, and David hears about it, right? So then he says, will they betray me? And will Saul come for me? Again, God says yes. Because at the time, I don't think he knew that they betrayed him. So then they flee the town. And then Saul kind of halts on going to that town. And then they go into the wilderness. And then David is going through the wilderness, going through the mountains of Ziph. And during that time, as he was going from fortress to fortress throughout the wilderness, Saul's pursuing him. And then finally, somehow Jonathan, Saul's son, finds David. He has he pinned David's location so he can track him anywhere he goes on his GPS, apparently. But Saul doesn't have that capability. And
Dropped
so
an air tag on him.
he dropped an air tag on him.
Yeah.
And so then he encourages him and then ghosts him right after that. And then Saul finally gets help from the Ziphites telling them, hey, we know where David's at. Come over here. And so Saul's like, all right, if you can prove it to me, then I'll go. So then they go and they start to surround David, right? And at the last minute, as they're about to overcome David, they get a message saying, hey, the Philistines are attacking. So then they depart. And all this time, Saul is thinking, God has given to me. God has given to me. God has given David to me. But every single time, God is like, no, I haven't. No, I haven't. No, I haven't. And we see here that David did not win on his own strength. And Saul made this claim that he is very clever or, tricky, or I forgot the word that was used. But really what it was is that David had insider help. He had someone who had omniscience and omnipresence, who was everywhere present, and he got direct advice and information from the God who was protecting him. And so what I want to kind of highlight in here, and maybe if something kind of sparks in your minds too, is who is the main character of this chapter? It's not David. It's not Saul.
Jesus.
Well, yes, God, who is Yahweh, who is orchestrating all this stuff, right? He tells David to go to Keilah, right? They didn't want to go, but they went. Why? Because God was going to deliver the city and then bring David out from Saul. And it was like he was choosing kind of where David was going to go and allowing Saul to get so close, and then something happens to pull him away. You see God's hand of protection and providence through natural means, not so much miracles. You know, he didn't open up the earth and swallow part of Saul's army and all that stuff, right? He used just the natural means, the geographical areas to protect David. And then he used like the enemies of Israel to draw the enemy of David away, Saul. So I think what's really important is when you're going through the chapter, when you read any chapter, is God is the main character of the story. You know, even if he's not mentioned, he is still actively in there, right? So if the Bible is about Christ, and this is why I like typology, is how is Christ in this passage, right? Well, for Christians in the 21st century, you know, like I mentioned, we plan our ways, God directs our steps. We bring everything to prayer to God, and he's going to direct who he has to come into our life, where he wants us to go, what job we are trying to look for, or anything like that. We always need to bring it to him, trust that he knows what he's doing, trust in what Jesus said in Matthew 6, where he says, you know, God knows you need the, you know, food, clothing, shelter, and all this stuff. But seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you, right? And that actually kind of leads into my passage. If you go to Acts 13:36, Paul is talking to the Jews in the synagogue, and he is telling them the history of Israel and sharing the gospel with them, saying that Jesus is the one that you that you killed, but God rose him up, right? So in 35 it says, therefore he also says in another psalm, you will not allow your Holy One to undergo decay. For David, after he had served the purpose of God in his own generation, fell asleep and was laid among his fathers and underwent decay. When I was reading this the other day, I knew in light of our chapter we were going to be going over David's life. And the thing that stood out to me was, for David, after he had served the purpose of God in his own generation. Well, what's happening in this chapter? David's being pursued and chased and always constantly in fear and anguish. He had the you know, the poor and miserable with him, right? What'd you say, the discrepancies of
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to.
the people that follow David?
The outcasts.
Yeah, the outcasts. Yeah.
Misfits.
The misfits. There we go. He had the misfits following him, right? What was God's purpose? Obviously to be king for him, but he had him go through these trials and persecutions and temptations and all these things to train him, right? Don't despise the chastening of the Lord. So God's purpose for him was in that generation. Then he fell asleep. He decayed, right? And then God moved into the next generation. And trying to say all that to say is, in every generation, God has placed people to orchestrate for his own purposes. And right now, for Christians in the 21st century, God has brought you into this life and given you a purpose to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. And what does that mean? That can mean a variety of things. How is God directing you and calling you and leading you to further his kingdom? Because that's the most important thing, is like to glorify God and enjoy him forever. And how do we do that? Well, we obey him and operate our lives in according to his purposes. You know, we inquire of him, where does he want us to go? Because he makes better choices than we do. I was very long-winded.
That's cool.
But something I just wanted to, like, God's character and attributes, if we can clearly comprehend and understand them as we read the Bible, I don't think there will be misconceptions or anything. That's why systematic theology is so important. Understanding who God is, what he has revealed about himself. So when we read the text, we're not going to take one thing out and be like, oh, what's that one passage? Put on the new man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to explain that.
There's this passage where it says, so put on the new man, and then one lady in a counseling session was trying to justify the fact that she decided to divorce her husband and marry this other guy. And she was like, well, it says in the Bible, put on the new man. And that was just a confirmation to me that I should divorce my husband and get with this new guy.
Yeah.
And just trash theology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's go ahead. Yeah.
Well, there was one thing. I was kind of thinking something along the same lines with that. With Saul talking in good language, right?
Yeah.
And but completely taken God out of context.
Yeah.
And so, and that was the thing, is like God doesn't contradict himself. Either things work together in contrast. Like there's things in the Bible that contrast, but they don't contradict. And if you use the Bible to hold up against whatever decision you may be thinking about making, it will tell you whether you should do that or not. Maybe not word for word. Sometimes it will be word for word. Most of the time, I would say it's probably not going to be, but you can usually use some common sense, and God does say to use wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a suggestion. He says get it in his word. He says be wise, don't be stupid. Don't be a fool is really what it says. But nowadays we would say don't be stupid. And there's a lot of people that are. And it's not because they're deficient in some. Well, they are deficient in wisdom, but God says that's a choice that you make. He says wisdom's there for you, but use the word of God to basically be a plumb line or a level to judge your decisions with before you make them, rather than after. Most people get wisdom by making the decisions and then suffering the consequences. But God says, "Hey, here's my word. Here's wisdom that's been around forever, and all you have to do is open it up. All you have to do is ask." God says, "If you ask for wisdom, He'll give it to you." And you don't have to make stupid choices and then justify them by saying, "Oh, well, the Lord just led me to do it," or whatnot, which is fine. Yeah, if God's leading you to do something, you should still pray and you should still be in the Word to see if that's God or if that's just you wanting something really bad, and it feels right. So you're, oh, it must be God. No, that is a dumb way to determine what you should do or what truth is. That is a really stupid way, because we're dumb. We're dumb on our own. People are just dumb. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and Saul supplanted God's will with his own, And he was just like, oh, I want to kill David, so this must be God,
This must be God's will for me, is because I want it.
Yeah, God's blessing me. Here's David, kind of thing. He must be approving. But my last thing is I'm awestruck at how many chess pieces God has on the board and how many purposes he has going on in this one interaction. One, he's using David, and he's to save Keilah. So like he's saving Keilah, right, from oppression.
We
from
are
the
pronouncing it
Philistines.
wrong, but just bear with us.
And then he's also building David's faith in him. He's just like, go do this, and then he's just like, should I do it? And he's like, yes, go do this. He's building God's trust and faith, or he's building David's trust and faith in God. And then he is allowing Saul to go one step further into, I don't know, like just reprobation, because he's using God's name in vain. Basically, he's like, oh, God has set this all up, and thank you so much. Blessed are you of the Lord for doing evil, basically, to the inhabitants who are turning David over. And notice how with Saul as well, he's there's a passage, it's very fascinating, in First Samuel 28:6, where Saul finally does inquire of the Lord by God's means, like the Urim and Thummim. It says, but the Lord did not answer him, either by dreams or Urim or Thummim or by prophet. So like finally, after presuming on the will of God so many times, and God's allowing these various times where Saul is presuming on his will, finally he does ask his will, and he's like, I'm not answering you anymore. You've used up all your credits, and that kind of thing. You've turned against me too many times. I'm not going to answer you. And so like he's got all these things on this chessboard happening at once.
Yeah.
And he's strengthening the things that need to be strengthened, like David's faith and David and Jonathan's covenant, with one another. And he's bringing Saul to the end where finally he's going to say, okay, you're done, So I think it's really cool. God's very brilliant in how he's orchestrating this event.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, Hardy, you got one more thing to say before I finish up?
We have a lot of choices in life, and speaking of wisdom, and speaking of David choosing to ask God to before he made choices, and then Saul assuming of God, and I think that in life, whereas God is sovereign over all things, right? And I believe that if things had been different, if David had not inquired of God, God would have brought about some sort of salvation for him in another fashion, although it wouldn't have been so easy. And we see that actually played out in David's recent past in this chapter, because he flees and goes to another country, right? And things don't work out for him so well. He ends up making a fool of himself in the court of this other king, right? And then he also has his family move to another country to get away from Saul, and he's trying to figure this all out in a by his own wits, basically, rather than going to God and saying, okay, Lord, what do I need to do here? But we see him now going to God and saying, God, what am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
God, what am I going to do? And I think actually that, rather than taking the victory away from Saul, I think the reason he brings everything up to that point where it's like, oh, Saul's going to get him, I think it's more about David than it is about Saul, because God's taking David and he's bringing him to a point where it's like, okay, things are kind of hopeless, and he's working in David's life to where when David has the opportunity to choose whether he's going to make his own decision or go to God before he makes a decision, he's going to God. And I think that's what God is doing in his life, is he's moving him more in that direction of being that king that submits himself to the King of Kings. And so when it comes to decisions in life, I think God gives us opportunities. Like you had mentioned, there's people God brings into our lives, and each person that we talk to, each person that comes into our day, is an opportunity to either encourage them in one direction or the other, and that might mean you share the gospel with them. But even if you're not sharing the gospel with them, you're encouraging everyone that you come in contact with down one path or another. You're either encouraging on a path toward heaven or a path toward hell. Or I guess if you're talking with other Christians, you're either encouraging them in a path of stumbling or in a path of trusting God. And so, but it's kind of the same thing. You're either ushering them one direction or another. It's either toward heaven or toward hell. And so I think that when we start to think about the different things that happen in our day that seem mundane, I think it's good to think about the people we come in contact with and the opportunities that God puts in our path and what we're going to do with them. Are we going to take them before God, or are we just going to assume that, everything's fine, everything's covered? I'm just doing my job. I'm just gonna, everything's great. I'm gonna work as unto the Lord. It's like, well, if you are working as unto the Lord, your work is a ministry, and the people you come in contact with are the people you're ministering to. And I say this as someone who works for myself. Josiah works for himself. And then, well, Travis works for the man, but
I'm an employee. I have a master over me.
But in that
I am
case
a
too,
slave.
you're
Oh my gosh.
in that case too, you're ministering to, and thank God they're believers. That's great. It's great to work with other believers.
My masters have a master over them.
Yeah.
True.
And so that's good. And you can encourage each other in that way. But yeah, God gives us opportunities to choose him and choose his way, or we can choose our way. God's still going to have his way in the long run, but it's going to be a lot harder on us if we choose to go against him.
It's a good proverb. Life is hard, but it's harder if you're stupid.
If you're stupid.
All right,
All
Travis.
right, yes,
wrap
I
us
got
out.
final encouragement, okay?
You're supposed to wrap us out.
No, I gotta...
I know, that was kind of long. Travis tells me, do you have a final word? And I'm like, blah, 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 blah.
It's okay. We're used to it.
You guys are gonna have to work with me. Be patient with this, okay?
Oh my gosh.
I have a final encouragement typology.
Okay, that's not
Yes.
where I thought you were going.
No,
That's fine.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay. God has called you, and you to be ICE agents for his kingdom, not on the basis of an external raid, but inward, right? It's been said before that human hearts are idol factories. God has called you to be the ICE agent to infiltrate your own heart and to remove the illegal and enemies that have infiltrated your heart through idolatry. Whatever that may be, it could be money, it could be power, it could be wanting to be known, finding your identity in something else other than Christ. As a Christian, through Christ and his death on the cross, he has given you the power and the victory to go move into your heart and remove the idols that are within, that come in, that cross the borders and try to corrupt you from the inside. God has given you a mission and a purpose to eradicate and mortify all those idols, to remove them so that you can be fit for the purpose that he has for you in his kingdom. So do not give up hope when you are struggling with things. Always inquire of the Lord and make every effort to submit to his will, to submit to his word, and kill the sin, eradicate, remove it from you. Remove the idols from your heart. It can be done, and through God's power and through the Holy Spirit, he will help you to do that. So don't be discouraged. It sounded
Amen.
better in my head, but that was the best I got for you right now.
No, it's fine. I just want to read the verse because it goes long.
What I
okay.
say sounds better in my head when I say it. Then I listen to it later, and it doesn't make any sense. And I go, oh, great.
Yeah.
Why am I on
Yeah.
YouTube?
So 2 Corinthians 7:1, just to validate that word, is therefore having the promises of God, beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. So
Boom.
Yep.
There we go.
all
Be
the bad
encouraged.
stuff, get it out of there.
Be an ICE agent.
I'm not sure about
Remove
that,
your
but-
idols. Eliminate the illegals.
Get 'em
Deuces.
out.
The illegals
Illegal
in your
idols.
heart. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The
all right.
illegal idols in your heart. That's
Yeah.
what I meant.
Oh boy. All right, thanks guys.
See ya.
Wait.
Deuces.
Wait. Hold on a second.
Josiah has something.
You
This
gotta
is
wait.
new.
You gotta hold on.
New territory.
Because I'm gonna fade out. Okay, goodbye everybody.